My name is Joelle Floyd, and I am a junior cognitive science major. My research this summer is focused on individual differences in multisensory illusory perception. I have been working on understanding how the sounds you hear and the sights you see combine in the brain, which we term multisensory integration. I've been focusing specifically on one multisensory illusion called the McGurk effect, in which the sounds that you hear can actually change what you see. Understanding how illusions like this work can help us to better understand how different senses integrate in the brain. Let's look at an example before I go ahead and explain what we think might be going on.
Ba.
Do you hear ba, da, ga, or thaw? Let me play it for you again so you can confirm what you hear.
Ba.
Now, let's listen to it one more time, but with your eyes closed.
Ba.
The sounds coming out of the woman's mouth are actually saying ba, but her lips are shaped like they are saying ga. This leads to people reporting hearing thaw, which is a combined percept. If you get this illusion, the visual information is changing what you hear. This tells us interesting information about how the brain works. Textbooks make it seem like the McGurk effect is universal, but it turns out there is actually a lot of variability in whether one perceives the McGurk effect. Sometimes people experience the illusion on one trial, but not as strongly on another, and some people don't experience the illusion at all, always reporting the correct percept. Previous research, such as a 2018 study by Violet A. Brown and her colleagues, have confirmed that people vary in their susceptibility to multisensory illusions. Specifically, they looked at the effect of lip reading and other cognitive abilities on the effect of people's susceptibility to the McGurk illusion. We wanted to build on this previous work by conducting our own study on the illusion and by using an EEG device to see if variability in the McGurk effect can be linked to differences in patterns of brain activation. EEG, or electroencephalography, allowed us to record and observe brain activity while participants viewed the illusion and reported what they heard and saw. There were multiple specific questions which we attempted to tackle. What is the average prevalence of multisensory illusions? Are people consistent over time? That is, do people sometimes experience the illusion and other times not? Do they get the illusion one day and not on the next? If there are individual differences, what are some of the factors that contribute to these differences in experience of the illusion? Particularly, can the brain state explain the differences in illusion experiences? What are the similarities or differences in the brain states when looking at matched as compared to mismatched stimuli? Are there differences in brain states right before the illusion is experienced? We recruited 43 subjects for 2 sessions, 7 to 14 days apart. 8 of these participants did not return for session 2, and 4 others were removed due to complications with their data, leaving us with 31 participants whose data we analyzed. Each participant completed 360 trials, which began with a fixation screen for 1,000 to 1,200 milliseconds. Then the participant saw a 2-second video of one of 8 different speakers. On 240 trials, the video was of McGurk stimuli, like the example I gave above. That is, the sound they uttered was ba, but their mouth was shaped like it was uttering ga. On the other 120 trials, participants saw control videos where the sounds they heard matched the visuals they saw. For example, the mouth shape and sound both corresponded to ba, da, and ga. These trials were important so we could differentiate between a matched auditory visual stimulus and a mismatched one. Then, a response screen with the response options ba, da, ga, and thaw was presented, followed by a short rest period. Crucially, the participants' brain states were recorded using an EEG from 64 different sites on the scalp. First, I'm going to walk you through the responses that people made without talking about the brain states. Here, this graph shows the average percentage of all the conditions averaged across the 2 sessions. There are a few important things to note. For the matched trials, where participants hear and see ba, da, and ga, almost 100% of the time when the voice is matched, they hear what they would expect. Now let's take a look at the McGurk responses. Here, people seem to report that they hear the fused percept thaw about 50% of the time in both sessions. This next graph shows the percentage of illusory or thaw responses broken down by participant. If all of the participants did not perceive the McGurk effect at all and only saw the visual or auditory percept, then the graph would look like this, with all of the bars representing each of the participants being at 0. If the opposite were true, and all of the participants perceived the McGurk effect all the time, then this is what the graph would look like, with all of the bars representing each of the participants being at 1. However, in contrast to either of these, the results which we found in our research show the variation in perception of multisensory illusions across the participants, with the participants on the left side of the graph perceiving the McGurk effect approximately 0% of the time, and the participants on the far right perceiving it 100% of the time, and most of the participants falling somewhere between these two extremes. Here, figure 3 shows the correlation of illusory index between session 1 and session 2 for each participant. We calculated an illusory index for each participant, which was a score between 0 and 1 that reflected how often they experienced the illusions, and we looked to see if people were consistent across their 2 days of the experiment. In the first figure, we can see a dotted blue line, which would represent a perfect correlation between the indexes of the first session and the second session for the same participant. This orange line represents the correlation coefficient which we found between session 1 and session 2 in our research. We can see the extremely strong correlation between these 2 sessions for each participant, showing that there is not significant variability in the perception of the illusion between sessions within an individual participant. This can clearly be seen by how close this line falls to the perfect correlation line. Beyond these behavioral results, we are also continuing to study the brain states of the participants, as it was made clear in our questions. Depicted here is a plot of the 64 different channels which were recorded by the EEG, each of which corresponds to a different part of the brain. First, as is depicted here, we gathered raw data from the participants. Then we remove noisy channels in order to clean up our data and make it easier to view. Then we take out non-neural artifacts from the data, such as the blink, which you can see being removed here. From this data, we can then further process it and average across all of the trials to see the resulting brain activity from the multisensory illusions. In continuing this research, we will continue with these processes and better understand more of the specific brain states which correspond with the behavioral results which we have already found. Finally, beyond what we looked at during this project, there are many future directions which McGurk research could extend. One possible direction involves a more detailed study of specific individual differences that cause an increase or decrease in the perception of the McGurk effect. Some specific groups which would be interesting to study would be musicians versus non-musicians, and also mono versus bilinguals. Another possible interesting direction to extend this research would be the study of clinical populations as compared to neurotypical people. One such example of this would be studying participants with aphasia and comparing their susceptibility to the McGurk illusion to those without aphasia. One more further topic, which I think would be interesting, would be looking to see whether the McGurk effect also presents itself in different languages, especially looking at languages which share very few similarities to ours. Lastly, I just want to say thank you to Professor Levitan, Professor Sherman, and the entire URC for allowing me to conduct this research this summer.